How's it going, guys? Good? I'm Michael. I'm the youth pastor. Good to meet you. Guess what? We're going to talk about the Bible today. You guys ready? It's going to be awesome. So, it's never a bad thing to do routine maintenance on your car. Can we agree with that? It's something you don't understand when you're in high school or college. It's something you learn as a real adult. So, my buddies that I was roommates with, they reach out to me like, hey, dude, there's this band. They're going to be in like Portland for like one night. We got to go see him. I don't think a lot of things through. And so I was like, totally. So we go to pack up. He's like, yeah, we're going to bomb it right to Seattle through the middle of the night. We'll leave at like 3 a.m. We'll get to Seattle, hang out, then drive back to Portland, and then we'll catch the band, and then we'll drive home because we all had church jobs. So we had to be at church on Sunday. So we were going to bomb it over the weekend all the way to Seattle and back, hit Portland along the way. Dear Lord. So I say yes because I'm like, I'm in college. This is what we do, guys. And so I hang out with the guys. We go down to Safeway and we load up on caffeine and snackage because that's what you do. And we get in the car and we start just whipping up to Seattle. Well, it was one of those nights, it was like kind of during, December, November. It was one of those times of year where it wasn't raining, but the ground was wet. So I'm driving, and I want you to imagine this mental picture. 5 grown men in a Prius. Little blue Prius, because you care about the color. And so we're going, and that thing was fully loaded. One of my friends was at least a person and a half, okay? So we had at least 5.5 in that car, and we're going up, and we start taking those turns, you know what I mean? Like up by like Ashland, like, the turns we're going. And as we're driving, I was going the speed limit, the California, like 60, 75. We're going, and next thing I know, from the back of the car, I start feeling the wheels start kind of kicking. I was like, got this. I've hydroplaned in an 84 Corolla. I can handle this. And so I was like, just kind of let off the gas, turn the wheel the opposite way. Next thing I know, we start going this way. I was like, nuh-uh. And so I turn the wheel, and then we do, for you skaters out there, a 270, which is just 90 degrees short of a 360. And we are like right at the rail of where we were driving. I was like, just breathing, it's so heavy. Dan, thanks for fixing my mic for this service. Just like freaking out. We get out of the car and we're all just kind of shaking up. We're like, are you okay? Are you okay? We're all okay. Okay, we're okay. And then we go back and we're like, what happened? Like, I was just going, and next thing I know, whipped out. I wasn't even going that fast. And so being, a male and having machismo issues, I was like, I got this. I'm going to keep driving. I got it. Get back in the car. We start driving, and I could not get that Prius over 40 miles per hour, okay? That thing, let me tell you, they don't have traction to begin with. You add a couple extra 100 pounds on there, and the wheels would start like spinning when we get over 40. So they just start going. And so I'm driving, I'm like, what the heck is going on? We pull back over because they're like, dude, you're gonna kill us. It's like, all right. So we pull back over and we get out, and I pull out one of these guys. You got iPhone lights? How did we function without these? Seriously, the amount of times I use my light, it's ridiculous. So I whip out the iPhone light and we go to the tires, and I'm like, holy cow, it was smooth. The tires were completely smooth. And I looked at my buddy, I was like, you didn't check the tires before we left? And I heard my grandfather's words echoing in my head from years of, you ought to check your car before you go places. Like years of hearing those statements, and I was like, oh, that's why he says that. Okay. And so it wasn't until I actually put the light on the tires that I could see what was happening. I could see the shape of it. I could see that there was no tread. And then we knew how to respond from there. So being broke and in college, we're like, let's keep going. We already spent the gas money. So we keep going, but we kept that thing like under 40 until finally the sun comes up, and then it dries up the wet on the ground, and we were able to make it the rest of the way to Seattle. Woo! That was scary, all right? That was a scary one. That was a close call. For sure, God had my back, I hope. Oh, my gosh. But here's the deal. We need light, don't we? Stupid college kids on road trips need the light. Kids, when they're terrified, as like little kids, right? They need light when they're afraid. Humans need light. You know, there's this thing called seasonal affective disorder. You heard of it? I probably have it. Hypochondriacs out there, my friends, just looking it up. Seasonal, oh my gosh. It's basically, here's how it works. The sun goes away, in the winter, and it gets cold, and you don't see the sun as much, and you actually get like a low-grade depression. It's called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. So what happens is when the sun comes back up, it's like, like my life opens up. It's like a game changer, man. I'm driving around, the sun's hitting those El Dorado hills, and I'm just like, yes, thank you, Lord. It's amazing. But our bodies actually need light. We need it. It affects our mood greatly. Here's the crazy thing. Ever, like Alaska, they'll have 2 or 3 days a night. They won't see the sun for like a month. It's crazy. Part of that, what happens is crime goes up, people go nuts. Like, it's ridiculous. It just happens when we're in the dark. We need light. Your body, physiologically, needs light for vitamin D. I know you think it's in your multivitamin, but you need the sun, okay? Look, we need light. We need it. And so when we don't have light, it causes all kinds of problems, right? When we don't have light, when we're in darkness, it can cause a mess. And so what could it mean when Jesus says, I am the light of the world? We know we need it. Maybe you've been around church before, you're like, I've heard this one when I was in Sunday school. Or maybe you're like, oh, they did that at the youth camp with the glow sticks. I remember that one. Like, maybe you've heard it before. Maybe you're like, oh, great, light of the world, here we go again. But what I want to help you to do today, and what I want to invite you to do today, is maybe lean in a little bit extra to what we're going to talk about, because we're really going to unpack this idea of light. We're really going to unpack what it means, what's the significance of it, why it's important. Maybe you're new to church and you're like, so this is what those Christians talk about. Yeah, it's important, I promise you. Hang tight. Because what Jesus does in saying he's the light of the world is he makes a claim. He makes a claim and he makes a promise that those who would follow the light, that would go to the light, that they would not walk in darkness anymore, but they would have the light of life. So we're picking up in John chapter 8, okay? It is in the peak of their festival. It was like 4th of July, 8 days in a row. You'd have to have the 5th of July, the 6th of July, the 7th. It was a party. It was called the Feast of Booths. And what they would do is they'd come from all over and they would hang out all day, all night. It was like going up to Tahoe and you're like, what the heck is, like, it was a party, okay? They loved it. They would hang out. And every night, what they would do is they had this like candle lighting ceremony. And people in the temple courts would go, and they would light these giant candelabras. And one historian, looking back at this time period, he wrote that the lights would light up the whole sky. They didn't have street lights. They didn't have, solar power or whatever. All they had was candlelight. And this candlelight was so bright from all the things that they lit. Maybe you've been to a Christmas Eve service and you see the room glowing, right? Like that kind of glow is all over the city of Jerusalem during this time. And what Jesus does is he gets up during this feast and they would have celebrated light. There would have been priests like fire dancing to light. Like they got down in the NT times, people. And he gets up and he says, I'm the light of the world. Because the light they were celebrating was a remembering of what God had done during the Exodus when he took his people out of Egypt, and he was the pillar of fire by night and he was the cloud by day and he protected his people. That's what they would remember with that. And he says, I know you're celebrating that light, but let me tell you, I'm the real light. I am the light of the world. Here's what he says. Again, Jesus spoke to him saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of light. Love this. That first part where he says, I am the light of the world, what's happening is Jesus in the Gospel of John, he's got 7 times he's gonna tell us who he is. He's gonna say, I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the gate. I am the good shepherd. I am the true vine. He's got all these I am statements. I am the I am. He has all these statements that he says where he declares himself to be God. For us, we're like, oh yeah, well, I'm awesome. Does that mean I'm claiming to be God? No. What he's doing is when you say I am, he's referring back to the name that God gave his people to call him in the Old Testament. When Moses goes up to the burning bush, God's like, Moses,
Go save my people.
And he's like, who do I say sent me? He says,
I am who I am.
and he's like, what the heck does that mean? It meant I am the all, I am the everything, I am existence, I am all things. And so that was his calling card for the rest of the OT and into the NT. I am. And so when Jesus says, I am the bread of life, the way that's constructed in the original language is the same way that the Greek version of the Old Testament constructs the way that God says his name. You following? Greek and thing. I'm sorry, stick with me. So what happens is he says, I am the light of the world. He's claiming to be God. We know that because he's gonna keep saying a couple I am statements for the rest of this chapter, up until the point where they decide to stone him at the very end. We know he's claiming to be God because they try to kill him. It's that clear. And so he says, I'm the light of the world. Light, it's a symbol all throughout the Bible. It's a symbol for salvation. You've got light and darkness that signify life and death in Greek thought. It was something that they understood. It's something we understand. Like if you've seen Lego Batman, darkness, like you know what he's talking about. It's bad, it's evil, right? And then light is good. Light dispels the darkness, right? In 1 John 1:5, it says that God is light and in him there is no darkness. Matthew 5:14, Jesus says this about you people. He says, you, the disciples, are the light of the world. He says that's our job as disciples, to be the light of the world. Philippians 2:15, Paul says, they shine like lights. He's talking about the people. May your faith shine like lights among this generation. So what is it about light? Well, can we agree that the world needs light? Most of you guys are on board. If you're not, the next 10 minutes, I'm gonna convince you. Here we go. We need light. This past year, you know we're coming up on a year for like this whole shutdown deal? Coming up on about a year. Crazy. Some of you are like, whoa, where'd the time go? It's been almost a whole year. And I feel like in this last year, we've seen more darkness than we can even like wrap our little minds around sometimes, right? It's like, God, what's going on? What's happening? The world feels so dark. In a lot of ways, it's like the darkness that's in people's lives is just being brought to the surface. And we're like, dude, what is happening? Like, where did this come from? Maybe something's been revealed in your own heart, in your own life, and you've been like shocked and repulsed by it. It's like when you get shut down away from everybody, you feel dark, you feel alone. The world is dark. We've seen it in this past year, but let's just zoom out a bit to the 20th century. In the 20th century alone, we've invented new ways to kill each other that wrought death on a scale heretofore unseen by human hands. Stuff like the nuclear bomb. There were ideologies that like dominated the 20th century that led to millions of people being killed. It literally were these ideologies where they thought this person is lesser than this person because of their ethnicity or their heritage. And it led to millions of deaths, the Holocaust. A part of that was dismantling this idea of the sanctity of life, which is directly connected to a concept in the Bible called imago Dei, where God says you were made in his image. That means every human life has value, every human life has sanctity. And yet, in the 20th century, we let go of some of those ideals, and we see the havoc that it wreaks. The death toll is insane. Like, it evades measure some of the things that these ideologies have produced when it comes to death. If we're willing to admit it, there's darkness in our own lives. There are our own ways where we want to hide in the dark, where we don't want to come to the light, where when we look on the inside, we find things that we're not proud of, that we don't want people to know. It's our secret thoughts that we would hate to have exposed. I used to think as a kid that they were going to play a movie of all your thoughts in heaven. That terrified me for years. I was like, don't think that, like if our thoughts really got exposed, some of us would be very nervous. Most of us, let's be honest. A lot of times we choose to settle for less. We hide in secret. There's decisions that have been made that are dissolving things like the nuclear family that God designed for his purposes to show his image. Like, there's so much that's happening in our world. There's so many things that we have to own as well for our own darkness. Get this. We get rid of this idea of God. God, Nietzsche kills God. He's like, he's dead. You're welcome. And then the world starts to fall apart. And now they have to rebuild morality. What do we do? Because clearly the 20th century bombed, so we got to come up with stuff. So there's this guy named Sam Harris, okay? He's an atheist, neuroscientist, and his whole deal, he's got this nonprofit where he's trying to free the thinking world from Christianity. I think we'd be friends. He sounds like a cool guy. So Sam Harris and I, we get along, we go way back, and I was reading one of his books the other day called Lying. Get this. What he essentially does is he makes this argument that telling the truth is the right moral thing to do because our brains are less anxious when we're honest. It's like Jesus said that 2,000 years ago. It was this like neurobiological examination of lying, and it read a lot more like a Christian self-help book. Like, well, we could probably sell this at the church. We agree with you. Go ahead. So pick it up on your way home. No, look, like they have to rebuild these things. They're like, oh, what? Lying? It actually makes you worse off? What? Yes, God told us that. And so what's happening is the great deception of darkness. The great deception of it is that it tricks us into believing that it is light. That's the great deception of darkness. So we've got celebrations and parties for people who are doing things that are sin, and our culture celebrates them as moral victories. We live in darkness. Our world is dominated by darkness. Darkness attracts more darkness. And then when the light finally shines on it, it hurts, right? You guys know, you 10 o'clock people, you know, today it's not gonna be as bad. 11:30 has it worse. When you guys leave here, the sun's just like right at that angle, and it's just like, there goes your eyes, right? It is bright. If you don't bring sunglasses, we have them at the Connect cart. You can get them, anyway. It's bright, the light hurts, right? When you come out of darkness. So a lot of us, we don't actually want the light. We don't want it because it hurts. But we can't move forward until we actually have the light, right? We can't see the path before us. We can't see the topography, the landscape of where we are. We need light. I didn't even know there was a volcano on I-5 because we drove there through the night. Went there the other day with my wife. We went up to Oregon. There's this massive volcano on the way up there. You wouldn't know it if there was no what? Gosh, you guys are good. I love you so much. You're with me. You're like, he said light like 100 times today. Like, stick with me. Okay. We need light. We get that, but it's still kind of like nebulous and philosophical, right? It's like, yeah, thanks. We need light. We get it. Okay, I can go home. Like, but how exactly does light bring life? How does it work? Here's just a few examples that I want to give you guys. Get this. Let's just take the notion of grief and loss, right? That's something we've all experienced likely, and if not, we will. We experience grief and we experience loss. What you're hearing right now downstairs is exactly what we want to happen, okay? So it's our 5th grade preview today. Let's go. Okay, the 5th graders are coming up in the middle school, and I told them, make as much noise as you can so that they love Jesus one day. So if you hear the noise, I'm sorry, that's what it is. Okay, back at it. Grief and loss, hard left. Okay, when it comes to grief and loss, we have to ask the question, how does light help us understand that? Well, if I could, I would turn off the lights in here and we'd use an object illustration. We won't because of liability issues, but imagine if the lights were off and I try to describe this table to you. I'm like, yeah, there's a round part, there's like this metal part, there's a hard part. We would get a conception in our head, but it's not until the light would be shined on it that we would really get an idea of what it looks like. That's true about grief and loss. Grief and loss in our life, when the light of Jesus shines on it, what we can do is we can see all the nooks and crannies of it. We can see the topography of it, the landscape, how it works, how to navigate it, because what we see from Jesus is this incredible idea called empathy. When it comes to grief and loss, what our Jesus did is he entered into our suffering. He didn't say, hey, you guys got this. Okay, I'll just fix it. He's going to fix it, but what he did is he actually entered into it and suffered alongside us. You're going to see that in a couple weeks when we do the story of Lazarus. Jesus weeps alongside of the grieving. He was going to heal him like a couple hours later, but he's weeping with them. It's one of the most important verses in the New Testament, one of the shortest. It's 2 words, Jesus wept. But it's one of the most important because it tells us that Jesus empathizes with all of our grief and all of our loss. And so we can see grief and loss for what it is, that God feels that pain with us. That's light to the darkness. Anger. We lose our temper, we get angry, we get frustrated. We're like, argh. What Jesus does is he casts light on our anger. He helps us see, oh wow, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I should have grace on other people. If you took some time and just started if you took all the judgment that we put on other people and we just tried it for ourselves, we probably wouldn't have enough time to judge other people. If we're honest with ourselves, like, dang, that's in there, that's tough. Jesus helps us to see anger in light of grace and to give grace where we would easily just be frustrated, because he had every right to be angry with us, but instead he gives us grace. That's the light on the darkness, helping us see it for what it is. Sickness. I feel like every couple of weeks, like I'm hearing a new thing that some families encountering or going through, some sickness that's just like feels insurmountable at the time. And it does. And that feeling is very real. But what we also know about the light of Jesus is that when it comes to sickness, we can view sickness in terms of eternity. We know that if somebody's sick, they're healed in heaven. Like when they get there, they're gonna be healed. Like we also know that they're sick right now, God may choose to heal them now. He may use modern medicine, he may perform a miracle, he may do whatever, but he could heal them now. But when we look at our sickness, we don't look at it the way that the darkness looks at it. When the darkness hears of sickness, it's a death sentence, it's over. When Christians who love Jesus, who follow him, hear about sickness, they say, I can see this through the lens of eternity, because I know that God has a plan, and he's not gonna just leave me hanging here. It casts light onto sickness. We see it for what it really is. You guys with me? Somebody say something, okay? Yeah, okay, good. Deceit, lies, right? We see deceit and lies for what they are. When we lie, it's like, oh my gosh, we have to keep telling more lies. Your life would be a lot easier if you never lied, because you wouldn't have to remember what you lied about. Whoa, crazy. Sam Harris was right. How did he get that? But what Jesus does is he looks at deceit and lies and he says, why don't you try telling the truth? The truth will set you free. What? He casts light on the deceit. Same with lust. When we think, oh, that person's gonna make me more happy than my spouse. Well, maybe I'd be more happy over there. What he does is he casts light on that. He says, no, there's more joy in faithfulness. There's more joy in the rocking chair on the porch when you're 65 than whatever 20-something just walked by. Like that's what Jesus is saying. And like he's casting light on the issue of lust. Depression. When it comes to just being down or just feeling like you don't want to get out of bed, like you don't want to do life, like he casts light onto depression by showing us things like hope and like joy. And that whatever circumstance you're in, we worship the God who's the God of that circumstance. And so we can entrust it with him. And it's hard, but when we give it to him, we find hope and we can find joy in the midst of these things. Now, some of you are like, great, I just solved my whole life. Thanks, Michael. No, right? I get it. When we actually come to the light, it hurts, right? It hurts our eyes at first. It's hard to soak in. But what Jesus says is, look, if you follow the light, if you believe in the light, you no longer have to walk in darkness. You don't have to keep tripping over grief. You don't have to keep tripping over depression or tripping over lust, because Jesus can show you what it is for what it is and help you to navigate through it. And so he then brings life into your darkness. That's what he promises to do. That's what it means to have life from the light. Next time you guys hear about the light of the world, you're gonna be like, that's big. Yes, okay? Let's keep going. So here's the deal. Who needs light? Gosh, what is going on with 10 a.m.? You guys are on fire. Okay, yeah. It's that you lost an hour of sleep and you guys are with it today. I love it. Okay, look, we all need light. All of us need it, okay? And Jesus knows that everyone needs it. And so what we see as this narrative continues is there's two big groups of people that really need light. There's the legalists and there's the lost. Okay, the legalists and the lost. Now, well, legalists, what the heck? I got my law degree, but I don't. Okay, look, legalists, right? That's when we're like a little extra religious. Like, you know you're more saved than the person sitting next to you, so you're like, are you listening? You better be listening to what he's saying. Elbow him, write that down. That's legalism, okay? Legalism, when we think we have it figured out, when we think we got life together, like that is legalism. Same with being lost. Lost is just when you're consumed with darkness, consumed in the culture, and you're not seeing things for what they really are. Some of us in here probably fall into one of those two categories. We probably either fall into some sort of like legalistic tendency or we fall into some lost tendencies. Here's what Jesus does. He has a little skirmish with these guys. Verse 13, he says this. So the Pharisees said to him, these are the legalists. They knew God. They had God figured out. They knew what God did and what God didn't do. Jesus shows up and starts telling them some new stuff, and he's like, which is really just old stuff, but the way he meant it. And they're like, I didn't learn that in school. Get out of here. Like, but he comes up and he's teaching and doing his thing. And so they're like, hey, you're bearing witness about yourself, so your testimony's not true. They do what's called the actually. Actually, in the Bible, it says that you have to have at least two witnesses, so you're wrong, Jesus, you're not the light of the world. And Jesus is like, oh my gosh, oh my me. Here we go, let's talk about it. And so he says, okay, look, even if I do bear witness about myself, which I don't, but if I do, my testimony is true. For I know where I came from and where I'm going, but you don't know where I come from or where I'm going. You judge according to the flesh, but I judge no one. The first time he comes, he's like, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to tell you about the plan to save you, okay? First time, we're not here to judge. Round 2 is when he's gonna come and make right all things that are wrong. He's gonna get rid of all darkness. Round 1, he's not here to judge. He says, but if I did judge, my judgment would be true because it's not just me, but it's me and the Father who sent me. Referencing this Father, they knew who he was talking about. They know he's talking about God who sent me. In your law, which is also his law, but in your law, Deuteronomy 19:5, it says something along the lines of you need 2 witnesses for a testimony to hold up in court. So in your law, you know that you need that. Well, I'm bearing witness about myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness about me. He's like, look, if you want to play your religious game where you need to check off your boxes, I check off your boxes. I've got God, and he's got my back. We're both here saying this thing. We got the 2 witnesses. And so they look at him and they're like, oh yeah, well, where's your dad, huh? Like, where'd he go? And they know he's talking about God, but they just want to be like, those guys, they want to be the actuallys. Well, where's your father? Jesus says, well, you don't know me or my Father. If you knew me, you would also know my Father. These words he spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, but no one arrested him because his hour had not yet come. Look, he says, you think you know God, you don't really know God. These people's lives were built on knowing God. Their identity was, I know God. That's why I'm important. That's why I'm special. He says, you don't really know God. You think you do, but you don't. You know some version of him that you've come up with, but you don't know God. And what I love about this is where he's saying this, what's important about that at the end there, is he's saying it in a place where everyone could have heard. Like he's talking to the Pharisees, but also women could have heard this. Because back then there were certain parts of the temple where women wouldn't go for teaching. He's in a place where they could have heard him. They could have heard what he was saying. He wants everybody to hear this. It's like, look, I'm the light of the world, and I do have the backing of my Father with what I'm saying. These people were Pharisees, and they needed the light. They needed the light. I was reading this book, kind of like we're brainstorming, preparing for Easter, all this stuff, and it's called Prodigal God by Tim Keller. Okay, now I always thought prodigal meant like ran away from home. It doesn't. Follow us on Instagram to find the definition. It'll be on there soon. Just kidding, I'll tell you now. It means to spend lavishly or recklessly, okay? It's this lavish or reckless spending, okay? So you've got the prodigal son, but you've also got this prodigal father. It's a beautiful story. I'm really excited for Easter, can you tell? Okay, but one of the things in that book is he talks about how important the older brother is in that story. The narrative is really kind of directed toward the Pharisees, and if you know the story, the older brother's like, I'm not partying with you. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, well, I'm a good Christian. I'm not an older brother. And he gets to this point where he's like, well, here's what Pharisees do. And he starts talking about your prayer life. And he's like, well, if you just keep coming to God with like request after request after request, but you've never just like spent time in adoration, you might be a Pharisee. I was like, uh-oh. I just downloaded this app called Prayminder. So commercial break. You guys should totally download it. It's awesome. It is this app where you can go in there and you just put in all the stuff you want to pray for, and then it pings you throughout the day. Like, I'm terrible at remembering stuff, so this app has helped me a ton. And so I put it in there, and it just, shoots you a text, and you can go, amen, amen. It's great. So totally recommend you download it, Prayminder if you want to get it. But get this. My list in Prayminder was like, help this person with that. Please fix this. Hey, God, it would be helpful for this to happen. Hey, God, I love you, but can you help me with this thing? Hey, this is a challenge. Hey, whatever. And it's just this list. And then I'm reading, I'm like, dang it, I might be a Pharisee. And so I added like some other stuff. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure adoration is a part of it. Now I'm even more of a Pharisee because I'm telling you, okay? But I added a little thing like, okay, I'm going to take some break to just say like, God, I love you because you're holy. Thank you for being holy. Because I'm not, like, just having that as a part of that. When it comes to being a Pharisee, the trick with being a Pharisee is you probably don't know you are one. Because you think you've got it figured out. Like, there's so many times that we can fall back into these kinds of habits where we just are like, man, I'm more saved than the next person, so I'm doing okay. Jesus is like, no, it's a level playing field out here. And these religious people who thought they had it figured out, they really didn't. And Jesus is trying to lovingly help them see that. He says this to the legalist. Hey, turn to me, like I'm the light of the world. You want this. And then he says it to the lost. It says, so he said to them again, verse 21, I am going away, and you will seek me, and you will die in your sin. Whoa. This is probably a little bit later, probably a day later or so. He's talking to another group of people. He says, look, you might come after me and want to follow me, but if you don't, you need to know you're going to die in your sin. You know, Jesus talked about hell more than anybody else in the New Testament. It's uncomfortable. He talks about this idea that we could die in our sin and be eternally separated from God. He's not saying this because he's mad at them. He's saying this to them because he loves them. He wants them to have a relationship with him. He wants them to know the light of the world. He wants them to forever be with him in eternity, to not live in darkness, because he knows how damaging the darkness is. And so he says, hey, you will die in your sin. That's a very real thing that he lays on the table. And so the people are like, they're not having it yet. So they're like, what's he saying? What, he's going to off himself when he says, where am I going that you cannot come? And so he says to them, look, you're from below, I'm from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. I told you that you would die in your sins, for unless you believe that I am, there's that catchphrase, unless you believe that I am he, you will die in your sins. He says, unless you believe that I am God, unless you believe in me, that's it. This is a warning to the lost. He's telling them, look, I'm the light to your darkness. I've come to help you navigate through all of these things. And the way you're going to do that is through trusting in me to understand, to interpret, to move forward, and to trust me with every step of your life. And he says, but if not, if you don't want this, know that you will die in your darkness. And that'll be it. And so he's warning them. He's saying, look, if you don't believe that I am, again, that phrase, ego and me, it's I am the I am. If you don't believe I am God, that could be it. And then they're like, well, who are you to tell us this? What kind of wisdom do you have? Who are you, buddy? And he says, well, just what I've been telling you from day one. I've been telling you this from the very get-go. I have as much to say about you. I could judge you, but the one who sent me is true, and I come to declare to the world what I have heard from him. He's like, look, amen. I could tell you the sins that you will die in right now, but that's not why I'm here to do that. That's not what I'm here for right now. I'm here so that you would know the light, so that you would follow the light, so that you would have new life in me, life abundant. And so he says, look, this is why I'm here. They still don't get what he's saying exactly. And so he keeps going. Verse 28, he says, so Jesus said to him, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that, there's that phrase again, I am. When you have lifted up, here's what he's talking about. When you have lifted up, it's talking specifically about when they put him on the cross and lift him up in front of everybody. They're going to be like, oh no, we just killed God. We just killed the Son of God. What have we done? He says, you're going to know it's me when you do that, because I'm going to do some stuff after that you can't even wrap your mind around. Amen. He's like, I'm going to pull off the greatest thing in history. I'm going to rise from the dead, something none of you have ever been able to do. I'm going to come back from the dead. He says, you're going to know I'm God when I rise and when I resurrect. And even one of the things I love about just the way that faith in Jesus works, it's like every time that I'm dealing with doubt or wrestling with issues, I always come right back to the resurrection. Because I'm like, okay, I can hang out and like argue with people about, stuff in the Old Testament all day. And like sometimes there's benefits, sometimes there's not. But when I feel like my foundation starts to get shaky, I just go right back to the resurrection. I'm like, well, did Jesus die and resurrect or not? And then it's from there that I build out the rest of my understanding of God. It's the solid rock of our faith. Our faith isn't built on like some like perfect knowledge of revelation. It's built off of Jesus, right? And so our faith starts there and it moves out from there. And so Jesus is saying, when I'm lifted up, you're going to know I'm God. You're going to know I'm he. And he says, look, I don't do anything on my own authority, but I speak as though the Father had taught me. And he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do things that are pleasing to him. Again, he's just talking about this union with God, this union with the Father, that everything he does is what God would want him to do. And it says that as he was saying these things, I love this. It says, many believed in him. That is so incredibly rare in the Gospels. You'd think reading through it like, wow, this dude got saved and this dude. It's actually kind of rare. A lot of times he's talking to people who are too religious to believe in Jesus. But here he's saying, look, this is the truth. Come and follow me. I'm going to be lifted up. He's talking about when he'll be lifted on the cross. And it says that many believed in him in that moment. That's what I would hope for all of us here. We could talk about the light of the world. We could say, oh, it's so great. It'll help you with your life. But really what you need is Jesus, right? It's Jesus who's gonna help us to understand and interpret everything in our life to be able to move forward in trust and faith in him. And even right here, when many believe in him, the content of their faith is Jesus. It's him. It's just trusting and treasuring in him. And so that would be my hope for us. That number one, we would see the light. It might be kind of uncomfortable to see the light. It might be kind of hard. It's like, oh man, that's bright. It hurts my eyes. I don't like the way it makes me feel. And now I've got to work on some stuff in my life. But I would hope that we could see the light. We could see Jesus is exactly who he said he is. Amen. And that we would let that inform our lives. And from seeing the light, we would then live in the light. Say, okay, no more darkness, no more deceit, no more lies, no more hiding. I'm going to come right out into the light. I'm going to let God order my path and direct my steps. And we begin to live in the light. And you know what happens when we live in the light? It's on the screen. You guys, you know this already. It's coming. All right. You carry the light. So now you become a light bearer. Your job now is to be a missionary. It's what we've been doing this whole month. You didn't even know it. We've been training you guys to be missionaries. You know that? All right. You guys are all missionaries. Congratulations. You've been christened or whatever the order. That's your job, is to go and share what Jesus has done, to carry the light with you wherever you go. And so, guys, we got something for you today, all right? I've got this card right here. You all can have one on your way out. But here's what we want to do. We want to empower this entire body of believers to go and be the living proof of our loving God. And so what we did, we talked to Papa Murphy. He's a nice guy. And what we did is we set up a way where you guys, each family, can go and pick up a pizza at any El Dorado Hills or Folsom location. What you gotta do is you gotta register still. So there's a card on your way out. Grab it, register. And what you can do is just sign up. People online, it's there for you too. Someone will put it in the chats. You sign up, get a pizza, and it's not for you. So one of you in here, you're like, dang it, we had dinner figured out tonight. Like, nope, not tonight. Okay, this pizza is for you to give to someone on your pray watch list. Somebody you've been praying would get Jesus, would know Jesus. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's your barista. Your job, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is deliver one pizza to somebody who needs Jesus. Someone who needs Jesus. It's some simple stuff, okay? And you've seen it. Like, we gave away like $7 one weekend. We're doing a missional grant. Now we're giving you guys pizza. You're like, what are they doing? We're trying to do this thing for real. Like, we're trying to like say, hey, we've seen the light. We're going to live in the light. We're going to carry the light. And so you guys are commissioned to do that, to go and carry the light to wherever you go. Just take them a pizza and be like, hey, here you go. I love you. They're like, what? I love you. Here, whatever. It can open up the door for a conversation. You don't have to like put a Bible verse on it, like Philippians 4:8. I can eat all pizza through Christ. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, just deliver the pizza. Don't be weird and have a conversation, right? Like, it's really that simple to be able to continue to build this like incarnational presence with people where they get to know Jesus because of the way that you love them. So we seek to be the living proof of our loving God. So would you guys just stand with me? Let's worship this Jesus. Let's look to Jesus, thank him for who he is, and let's just praise him with all that we have.